Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Tonight, I thought we'd get back into the terrifying truth regarding what happened with me and my creepypasta stalker. And this is where I started to turn things around and point the finger in the other direction. So sit back, relax, and get ready for something you might not have expected. It's time for the terrifying truth, part 2, the local Channel 21 profile.
Hello again. My name is Sabian Lockhart. Some of you may have listened to the previous entry, The Terrifying Truth, and for those of you that haven't, you're sure not to be left in the dark, I promise you. As stated previously, I did not discuss this topic as openly as I used to previously when I first came out with that story. I had, though, continued my research into the dark mystery that we all had come to know and love as E's story, written by Camden Lamont, and the infamous Mr. Bear, written about within. Unfortunately, hard evidence in actual unresolved homicide cases is difficult to unearth, so the findings I had made at the time were limited. However, this didn't mean that my continued research had been unfruitful. Many enlightenments have been derived from the nuances in E's story. Conversations with individuals claiming to be the man in the bear costume, and information provided by various dedicated users. The man who owned the channel Local Caledon 21 in E's story had supposedly grown up in the Ontario region of Canada. He had been described as a pedophile in some instances, but these accusations were entirely unsubstantiated. However, the sacrifice of the 16 children for the purposes of some dark satanic practice had been supported in many instances. In all cases of the individual claiming to be Mr. Bear, they disapproved of pedophilia, while simultaneously acknowledging correlations between the murder of children and satanic worship. At this point in time, I had conducted 3 separate anonymous interviews for a story that I have yet to release. The owner of Channel 21 was supposed to have grown up in deplorable circumstances, which, sparing the extensive details, resulted in the development of severe social disorders and an altered perspective on reality due to augmented development of psychological prototypes, as supported by all 3 of these separate interviews. It is speculated, and backed up by provided information, that he witnessed the death of both his parents before obtaining the means of establishing his own residence. It has been provided that the owner of Channel 21 had been broadcasting long before the arrival of his most famous station in 1997. Since the story that E had provided had gained momentum, a plethora of related experiences had been flying around the internet, and some of them were landing in my inbox. Shortly after the release of The Terrifying Truth, the Caledon Local 21 YouTube channel had presented us with several episodes of Booby. Whether these were authentic episodes, newer ones, or a product of a devoted fan were and still are out for debate. However, shortly after the release of these videos, the owner of the channel stated that he had been forced into hiding. His activities on the channel had been nearly non-existent since I had written this update. So, by now, I bet you're all thinking that this stuff is all hearsay and may have no plausibility at all. In most cases, I would agree with you. A few weeks after the owner of the Caledon Local 21 YouTube channel, or Mr. Bear, went into hiding, I received a very notable email from a user named John Mitch, offering his help with continuing this investigation. Of course, I agreed to any assistance that I could gather. A few emails later, John informed me of an email he had received from Mr. Bear. He had apparently asked for instructions for joining his show. In response, John received a sort of encoded message with the numbers 81929 being the most highlighted portion of the message. Within John's next email resided an attachment. It was a copy of the message that he had received. Upon close scrutiny, I was unable to determine any decipherable components, besides the random nature of the generic message and those numbers. Amidst the characters were what appeared to be symbols made from a selective type of font. As most would likely do, I proceeded to think of the numbers as a possible zip code and punched them into a map tool. The response I received is that, as a zip code, it rendered a California address. I concluded this result was not the one that I was looking for and that the numbers did not represent a zip code. And unfortunately, I was never able to crack this message. After passing this conundrum on to others, I once again let the topic slip from my mind, until I received yet another email from John. In this message, John informed me that he had been running an IP tracker on the other messages that he had been receiving from Mr. Bear the whole time. As far as good ideas go, John, my hat was off to you, and it still is. He told me that the statistics provided by the IP tracker made no sense to him, and I thought that I might be able to assist. So I downloaded the attachment and I opened it. It was a picture file, similar to the last. My eyes scanned the frame before me, and that's when my heart sank yet again. I understood why the email made no sense to John. The town that the IP was registered to was that of Coxsackie, New York, a very small town near the Hudson River, just south of Albany. However, this made absolute, clear, terrifying sense to me. Coxsackie is the next town over from me, only a short 5 to 10 minute drive away. Even if this was a prank, it was a pretty elaborate one. I did happen to take a drive by the residences located near the red dot on the map. Another picture file that was included in John's email highlighted the location of the address. As was already expected, everything seemed as it should at these houses. There were no severed heads or monstrous figures in the yard. And no, I didn't trespass. I do know what happened to me, as described in The Terrifying Truth, and although I cannot provide further evidence of my experiences, my knowledge of those events is, but still, my personal experiences, the inclusion of this mysterious address, and the utilization of the same cable company that I have, had to mean something. It wasn't for a while longer that I would discover a shocking possibility. I wanted to tell more about this story at the time, but it seemed that I had hit a dead end, with some really unsettling results. So, once again, I turned my attention to E's story, Camden's story, the original 1999. Here, I'd like to provide to you a few highlights from that story. As described in the story, Booby, episode 12, Together. The episode of Booby begins with one hand beating a bottle of ketchup over and over until another hand appears and says, "Together." Upon such a time, both hands work together on beating the bottle, which causes the contents to release onto the table. Odd as it is, it would seem that this was the end that Booby was trying to achieve by himself, but was unable to. In this episode, Mr. Bear arrives with an ATV with an attached wagon full of 7 of the 16 children. My question here is, what deviant would have split the children 9 to 7 and leave the unconscious ones by themselves unattended in such a distant location? In the story, E stated that the owner of Channel 21 was Mr. Bear. He was Booby, and he was the cameraman. As described in that story, Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 23, Mr. Bear starts the camera on its side, and we see a child who's apparently talking to a busy Mr. Bear, as Mr. Bear informs him strongly that he's not welcome. The boy signifies that he is irate due to the circumstances revolving around his young sister, and at the top of the stairs the boy tells Mr. Bear that he's going to call the cops. Mr. Bear then runs up the stairs after the boy, and as this is happening, the camera moves to its upright position. So, in E's story, he provides us with an email that he received from an individual claiming to be this man in a bear suit. And he informs him that someone unknown to him told him that he would come back to his hometown. The identity of this mysterious person, or conceptual being, has yet to be fully determined, but it is widely assumed that the man referred to as Mr. Bear is referring to the devil. In Camden's story, as described, Booby, episode 42, Playing with Scissors. This episode opens with Booby hopping around with a pair of scissors while another hand is swinging around aimlessly, and before long, a child's hand is forced into the screen from beneath the table. Now, I noticed a couple of things here in the story. First off, if two hands were on screen, how did the child's hand get forced into position? And secondly, for those of you listening, try and bounce one hand up and down while lazily swinging the other. Do you see where I'm going with this? One final thought. According to this story, the day before the police raided the home of the owner of Channel 21, the man vacated his residence, disappearing from police grasp. Police call this a tip-off. So, by now I'm sure that you've all come to the same conclusion that I had, that the owner of Channel 21 wasn't working alone. At least that's how the story seemed to have been written. It would seem that he had a partner, at least reasonably. Someone with the same interests, goals, warped perspective. This similar altered perspective may have been even sculpted by the man, Mr. Bear himself. The stuttering narrator in the earlier episodes, as described in Camden Lamont's story, the narrator, the stuttering one, in the earlier episodes of Paint with the Soul, suggests a submissive, a possibly younger speaker, a contrasting personality to the one of Mr. Bear himself. I had also recognized that I wasn't the only individual to come to these conclusions. Another new and upcoming narrator at the time, by the name of Creepy Croter, had also mentioned that he believed Mr. Bear would have had help in his cellar. As far as I can tell, no, the person claiming to be Mr. Bear could not have broadcasted to my house from Canada, but in light of these new insights that I had discovered, and the valuable evidence provided to me by my helpful listeners at the time, the means through which said broadcasting may have been possible had begun to surface. So as always, I will promise to keep everyone posted, give you more updates on what had happened with me. And until then, just remember, stay safe, and keep in mind, monsters may not be as far as you think.
Well, as you can see, as this story is progressing, you might have some twists and turns that you might not have expected, but that's okay. The next part is going to release very soon, and until then, make sure to return again next Saturday for more gore galore. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, All new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.